Welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to be making Torta Caprese. That's an Italian cake and it's flavoured with chocolate and it contains almonds. Sometimes people use a mixture of almonds and hazelnuts and the nuts are ground into ground almonds or almond flour, depending on how you refer to it. It's quite an easy recipe, but there are a few ingredients to combine, and you have to separate the eggs and beat the egg whites and yolks separately, but it all comes together into a very nice cake, and it doesn't take too long to make at all. So you have to start off by preheating the oven to 190 Celsius. That's 170 Celsius with a fan, 375 Fahrenheit. And then you need to grease a 9-inch or an 8.5 inch springform pan, and then flour the inside with potato starch. And I say potato starch or potato flour because that's what I'm using. But if you can't get that, then you can use plain flour instead. But I think that using the potato starch instead of the plain flour makes it or keeps it gluten free. So onto the ingredients, and I have 170 grams of dark chocolate, which I have ground fairly finely. You can chop it up into pieces, but I used my little processor to grind it quite finely, and that works out at 6 ounces. I have 170 grams, which is 1 1/3 cups of icing sugar, and I have that in these two separate bowls, so I've divided it in half basically. I have 14 grams of cocoa powder, which is 2 tablespoons. I have 170 grams, which is 1 2/3 cups of ground almonds. I have 170 grams, which is 1 1/2 sticks of softened unsalted butter. I have 25 grams, which is 2 1/2 tablespoons of potato starch. And then I have 5 medium eggs, which I've split into whites and yolks. That would be large eggs in the USA. I have 4 grams, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, a pinch of salt, and the seeds from half a vanilla pod. So I'm going to set most of the ingredients aside for the time being. And the first thing we're going to do is to cream the butter and half of the sugar together. And I'm going to do that in with my hand mixer, and we need to do that for about 6 minutes till it's nice and fluffy. Now you could sift the icing sugar because it's prone to clumping, but because we're going to whisk it, it shouldn't make any difference without sifting. So I'm going to whisk this until it's creamed together nicely and it's quite fluffy. And as I'm doing that, I'm actually going to add in the vanilla bean seeds, so that gets incorporated in as well. And with that mixed and it's nice and fluffy now, I'm going to add the egg yolks in slowly and mix those until everything's nice and fluffy still. And I'll set that aside, and the next thing I'm going to do is to put all the remaining dry ingredients together, and I'm going to start by sifting the cocoa powder because that tends to clump. And the potato starch, that doesn't need sifting really, I don't think, but it takes no time. And then I'll add the baking powder and the salt. When I said the remaining ingredients, I should have mentioned not the sugar. The sugar is going to go into the egg whites. So with that all into one bowl, I'm simply going to give that a mix round to get it combined. With that mixed, I'll set that aside for the time being, and I'm going to add my sugar into the egg whites, and I'm going to whip this until I have stiff peaks. So, the final thing to do before we put it into the tin is to mix everything together. And to do that, I'm going to take about a third of the egg white and about a third of our mixture, and I'm going to mix those together with the butter and egg yolks. And then I'll add another third of each, do the same, and then the final third of each and do the same. And with that mixed in quite well, I'm going to put that into the cake tin. And then spread it around to get it level. And with that levelled off like that, I'm going to put it into the oven and bake it for 45 minutes. Then I'm going to take it out of the oven and let it cool completely in the tin, and then I'll come back and we'll turn it out and we'll sprinkle some icing sugar on the top just to finish it off. Okay, so our cake has baked, and I've allowed it to cool down completely, and then I've turned it out onto an upturned plate so that I have it upside down. Now in fact the base didn't release as easily as I wanted. I was tempted to use parchment paper on the base, but I didn't. But it released okay. I think it was just a bit caught around the rim of the cake tin. So what I'm going to do is, the traditional way is to sprinkle some icing sugar over the top, and in Italy they tend to have a patterned thing that you can put on the top to sprinkle the icing sugar over, and I don't have that, so I'm simply going to use this, which would just make a bit of a pattern. Like that, and then take it off. So basically that's the cake. So what I'm going to do is just clear this mess, and I'm going to cut a slice of the cake. And there, as you can see, it's nicely baked. So I'll have a taste of it. That is very, very good. It's chocolatey, but you can taste the almonds as well, and it's very light. Oh, that is very, very nice indeed. So as I say, it's quite easy to make, even though there are a few ingredients involved, and it doesn't take long at all. So I hope you'll give this one a try, and I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, which will take you to this recipe, and I'll put a link to it below the video as well, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.